Welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. In this short take, I want to talk about the debt and the desperation of President Donald Trump. So, the first thing I'd like to do is to share the screen with you. I want to go over an article on the tax returns of Donald Trump from Truthout. And the title of this is Tax Returns Show Trump Looting Treasury to Stave Off His Own Financial Disaster. And the article was written by William Rivers Pitt, the senior editor and author from Truthout. It was published on September 28th, just yesterday. The great white whale of Trump-era journalism was finally harpooned and bloated on Sunday night. I'm quoting now from Pitt. Tax returns, ho! That was a nice touch. And the resulting product is a thunderclap of venality and greed astride a form of grasping self-interest unseen in the White House since the epic corruption of Warren G. Harding. That was, in case you've forgotten, the administration that started in 1921, 100 years ago. In 2018, the New York Times published an exhaustive report on the myriad ways the Trump family, going back to patriarch Fred Trump, used a variety of tax dodges to hide the family fortune. This latest Times report lays out what Donald Trump has done with that fortune up to and including the years he's been in office. And quoting here from the Times report, Pitt says, quote, the tax returns that Mr. Trump has long fought to keep private tell a story fundamentally different from the one he has sold to the American public, unquote, reads the report. And quote again from the report, his reports to the IRS portray a businessman who takes in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, yet racks up chronic losses that he aggressively employs to avoid paying taxes. Now, with his financial challenges starting to mount, the records show that he depends more and more on making money from businesses that put him in potential and often direct conflict of interest with his job as president. No, it is not a pretty picture. It is, in fact, a pathetic, nearly to the point of unrestrained hilarity. The bragging billionaire, quote-unquote, blowhard president of the United States is more than $1 billion in debt, and about half of that is coming due in the next few years. Journalist Dan Alexander on the Trump beat for Forbes and author of White House Inc., How Donald Trump Turned the Presidency into a Business, sat down on Sunday night and crunched some numbers based on the Times reporting. If Alexander and the Times have it right, which very likely they do, given how articles of this magnitude endure weeks of factual and legal scrutiny before seeing daylight, Trump is only a few short years away from being subsumed by a tidal wave of red ink that will wash him out of most of his properties and leave him stranded on the beach like some strange orange whale. According to Alexander's tally, Trump is $100 million in debt for Trump Tower, with a loan coming due in less than 2 years. He owes $139 million for his 40 Wall Street property, debt coming due in 2025. His stake in the 1290 Avenue of the Americas property has him $285 million in the hole and comes due in 2022. His stake in the 555 California Street property is $163 million and comes due this time next year. This list goes on and on, ultimately coming out to $1.1 billion in debt. There is currently a great deal of, quote, we knew that already, commentary being inspired by this inspired piece of Times journalism. To no small degree, this is true, Donald Trump and his entire family are, among other things, perhaps the most obvious pack of grifters to come down the road since the original snake oil salesmen plied their blighted wares on the dusty byways of a fledgling nation. It does not take an electron microscope and the sensory perception of a canyon bat to pick up on this. That being said, now we have the receipts, and they portray Trump as being much more than merely greedy. He hasn't turned the White House into his personal ATM machine because he loves money like any good capitalist does. He's doing it to stave off looming financial disaster. He's looting the Treasury not simply because he can, but because he absolutely has to if he wants to avoid getting pauperized by his own horrid business instincts. He's using gobs of our cash to plug the gaping holes in his sinking ship. This makes him pathetic and infuriating, yes, but it also makes him dangerous as we stampede toward an election that Trump appears more and more willing to steal or disrupt in order to stay in office. We have with this time's piece a more acute understanding of his motivations. If Trump loses this election, he loses his access to the spigot of federal money he's using to hose down his inferno of debt, and his personal financial Armageddon is only a few scant years away. If that happens, Trump would have no money to pay the kind of lawyers he will need to keep a roof over his head. His humiliation before the world would be complete and absolute, and that right there is the fate he has manifestly dreaded for the term of his life. That is what Trump is fighting to avoid on November 3rd. Not so much for the money or the freedom, but to avoid the disgrace of this man with such a towering yet fragile ego, in possession of some awesome political powers, now faces a final confrontation with what appears to be his greatest fear: shame. Trump's efforts to attack the veracity of this news won't wave the debt collectors away. Understanding this, you will understand why so many are flatly terrified at what he might do in 36 days and beyond to dodge the awful reckoning he has fled from for so long. Now, that was a brilliant screed by William Rivers Pitt. But there is yet another point to be made about that particular screed and Trump's predicament. Why, oh why, was Trump not impeached by Nancy Pelosi for all of the things manifestly against the Constitution that he has done? Violation of the domestic emoluments clause of the Constitution, violation of the foreign emoluments clause of the Constitution, abuse of power, venality, corruption in spades, all there. And Nancy went into an esoteric investigation of corruption involving a foreign country that nobody wanted to hear about, that didn't mean a thing to people. And she refused to go after him for what was right in front of her face from the first day he entered the White House. What a colossal failure is Donald Trump. And what a colossal failure is Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats as well. I'm ending this progressive short take I'll see you again soon.